when you got off Shark Tank, you're a smaller business. You don't have very many licenses. There's a market. What was your next strategy? Was it like door-to-door sales? Did you use reps? Like, you had to be very aggressive. You had to pre-print some inventory for all of these schools.
It was rough. Yeah. I think we had 27 or 30 licenses at the time we went on the show, and my husband and I had gone on a mission to like really attain the SEC. That was the kind of the Alabama SEC. Those were the schools that we were really trying to target. When we went on the show and we had already acquired those licenses, thank goodness, that really opened the floodgates. And so every single school just, now that Alabama was on, now that we were we actually at that same show that we shipped our product to, we were asked to become an Ohio State sub-licensee. That was the first year they did their N1 deal. So we became a licensee for them. And we ended up having to take a risk on inventory for a while. It was really challenging because our industry has long lead times. Like, we'll book orders in January, but we won't ship them till July. And so they weren't necessarily in stores until August. And then we don't get paid for 30, 60, 90 days later after that. So can you imagine like the long lead times? It was brutal, financially and risk wise of the inventory. So we certainly had a fair share.
So hold on one second, Shauna, 1 second. So in our screen printing industry, we preach getting paid up front, getting paid up front, getting paid up front. Mm-hmm. And there are industry leaders that are like, don't even take an order if you can't get paid up front. That does not exist in your space, correct?
It does not. In the B2B world, because we were B2B first, we had to be. That was part of the licensing agreements. And that is certainly something that like they're going to say, no, pass, next vendor, please. It's just not a thing. A lot of risk, lots and lots of risk.
Wow.
So how do you get those licenses? I'm new to this space. Like, Steven, how does a shop get that if they're on a college campus?
That's why I was hanging out with Shauna and Kurt, because I'm like,
is it just like meeting people, or is it what?
Well,
no.
Is there a jot form?
Go ahead, Steven.
The position, I'll just tell like shops, the position I'm in is like, we have a license for the University of Illinois. We're crushing it for U of I. And now I'm like, okay, we're getting athletes at different schools. And the athletes want to do their jerseys and all that stuff. And you literally have to like go one at a time to try and get them. Right. So I'm in a very difficult spot because I have to try and get all of these licenses. And so if we want to pitch to these athletes, we need these licenses. So Shauna, tell us about that journey of how you have to acquire them.
It's difficult. Apparel is the hardest one to attain. It just is. And then there are certain categories of apparel that we actually are licensed for, but we aren't licensed for other categories because they're exclusive to certain vendors. So they do a pretty good job of like making sure that there's not a lot of, cannibalizing in the market of sales. But their biggest pitch is, how are you going to show incremental, unique product or unique distribution? Well, we felt that we had both. But it still wasn't enough. Like I mentioned, we incorporated in June of 2010, but I think I only had at the time for apparel, you had to stay in state only. Like they required you to prove your concept in state.
So they denied you guys, or it's just,
no, you just had to follow that process in order to go out. You had to go within your state at the time for 1 year, and then you could grow outside of your state. So as soon as we could grow outside of our state, we were, on the phones with licensing directors, explaining to them our model, what we were doing, how it's selling out. But yeah, it was one by one until we got the BAMA license and the SEC license and some of the others that were really incremental at the time, because apparel was just brutal to get into. And then once we had that concept, then the others followed suit, and it was a lot easier to apply and to get that really backing, I guess, and support. But it was still one by one. It took, I think we're up to 200 I don't remember after the show. I think we're up to 271 now licenses. I know we're over 250. Think about that, that's a long time to attain all those licenses in that many years. So it's taken, each one of them has their own unique philosophy or reason why they do or don't feel like they need another licensee in the category. So
and then we
really respect our relationships.
That royalties, because I know, Steven, you're always talking about too, that, we got to pay royalties, we got to collect this, we're going to track that.
Yeah, we do it in the Greek space, and it's tough. It's not easy.
I think that's probably what the most people are unprepared for, is how brutal the back end is on royalty reporting.
Yeah. And you have to be very dialed in. I mean, it's a tax that you have to pay for the right to sell that stuff, and you have to be educated on it, and it's not easy for sure. And you don't want to mess it up either.
No.
You definitely don't want to mess it up.